All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Mark. As you all probably already know, this is our last Lunch, Learn, and Collaborate meeting for 2025. And we welcome you to an interesting presentation, I think, with my two other admin REDCap colleagues in the presentation today. But before I get started, I always like to talk about the stats. In the mid-red cap, we still have approximately 521 active projects. Approximately 201 are in production and 320 are in development. Got 586 users in those projects and still have not only, but nine Mosio projects. Do want to remind that this number needs to be decreased rapidly, as I'll mention and talk about a bit later, because we're getting ready to turn off access to the Med Red Cap soon. For the ITS REDCap, it is growing. We have approximately 253 active projects, of which 82 are in production, 169 are in development. We have approximately 185 users, and three of those projects have Mosio enabled. Just want to make a few announcements, if I may, before we get started in our presentation. Remind you about the deadline for the migration of projects from MED to ITS REDCap is November 17th, 2025. Otherwise, those MED REDCap accounts will be suspended, noted on November 21st. However, I want to remind everybody that if those that cannot meet that deadline, we do ask that you submit your extension request before November 17th. This is the URL link to the survey requesting. One of my colleagues will be posting that in the chat at the end of this meeting, so everybody can grab those if they have needs for it. We will notify you prior to the 21st that your extension has been approved. Also, I want to remind everybody that you cannot continue working in your Med REDCap project while that project's being migrated to ITS. For the ITS REDCap projects that have been moved, those same Med REDCap projects will be set to offline. You will still be able to look at the data. You just can't make any modifications to those projects. As I said before, the October LLC meeting is the last one for 2025. Little housekeeping, kindly remind you to stay muted, raise your hand, or type a question in the chat during the Q&A portions of the presentations and at the end. We have three presentations. This is the link to any questions about the ITS REDCap Q&A documentation that we have. Again, that link will be shared at the end of this meeting. And then we'll take those questions if anybody has any questions or thoughts about that at the end as well. Our presenters today are my colleagues and I, the REDCap admin team. And our topic today is going to be data visualization. And our meeting will cover the methods of visualizing your REDCap data. We will cover creating reports, custom dashboards within REDCap, as well as using outside programs such as PHP, SAS, R to extract the data out and visualize it in Power BI. Marcelino will be covering the topic on record status dashboards, creating reports, and custom dashboards within REDCap. My colleague Simi will be covering data statistics and exporting data to be used in programs such as SPSS, SAS, and R. And I will be covering the topic of taking that data, using the API, pulling the data with both Python and PHP to extract data and pushing it over into a Snowflake database. And then after creating the views for that data, connecting it to Power BI so that it can be visually seen in Power BI. Sorry. And so with that, I'll stop sharing and my colleague Marcelina will start out with her presentation.
Hello. Um, so there we go. So I'm Marcelina Gallus, and I'll do the first third of the presentation. And so, like Mark mentioned, I'm going to be covering record status dashboards, project reports, and project dashboards, and then I'll hand it off to Semi that'll go into more detail. So I'm sure you all are familiar with your record status dashboard, as that's the main way to access the records that are producing data within a REDCap project. Here's an example of what a default record status dashboard will look like. So you'll see all of the different data instruments that you have, and then you'll see either gray circles or a different mix of different statuses. So for example, the ones that have check marks, you'll note are those that are survey responses, and then the rest are data form inputs. And so once you get to have more record IDs, it'll split up into different pages. So you'll have to sort through which page has like the latest data, but it all won't show up at the same time. You can sort the view based on the instrument status or the lock status. And right now I have it based on the instrument status, and none of these are locked. So something that you may not know if you already use the default dashboard is you can change it and you can create a custom record status dashboard, which allows you to filter specific records that you want to see, select the instruments that you want to see, and then sort it differently. The default here is record ID, and that's how the default record status dashboard is sorted, but you can change it based on any of the fields that you select. So, for example, this is what the default record status dashboard looks like. And it, as you can see up here for the data instruments, there's treatment A data instruments and then treatment B data instruments. So if I wanted to just view one or the other, I don't necessarily have to leave the record status dashboard space. I can sort by treatment A, which just has the one record, or I can sort by treatment B. And you'll see on here where it says treatment B, that will also have a default label. So you can kind of change that depending on what you want to view. So default, you'll see all of the records, and then you can kind of sort which ones. I know that we have previously seen this can get sorted by and filtered by if there are scheduled appointments for the day, so that way you know which records are impacted on the day, and you can go through and filter those instead of having to remember and then go through them one by one. So as this is helpful, like record status dashboard is helpful to see which one is complete, incomplete, unverified by a simple view of the color and the symbol. However, what if you wanted to view the data, but you didn't want to export it into a different software or a CSV file? You can view that in the project reports. So this is a case of viewing all of the data for all of the records. And since this was a test case, it has a little bit of data, but not a lot. So this barely fit on my screen as it is, but the more data instruments that you have per record, the longer that it'll go on. And like my hand is extending past the camera, but the longer that it'll go on off the screen, which is helpful if you want to like control F something within the records, and you know that it's somewhere in the data. But there's an easier way to do this. Again, thinking about it in that frame of filtering treatment A versus treatment B, and then things that are important to that, as opposed to just things that exist within that record. So, is this what I wanted? Okay. Oh, okay. When we're setting up the record status dashboard, when you're setting up the record status dashboard, the custom one, there's a bunch of different fields that you have. I think this slide has been repeated. Maybe I'll jump forward. Sorry about that. So jumping into project reports, you can find this on the left-hand side labeled data exports, reports, and stats if you don't have any custom project reports yet. So currently, when you don't have any custom project reports, the only things that will show are all data and then selected instruments, which you'll then be able to make custom selections. However, there is a create new report that will kind of go through each of the individual steps. What we saw before within those couple of slides that I was looking at was the review report for all data, which has everything under the sun within your project. So when you start to create a new report, you'll need a name of the report, whether or not you want to set this as public. So do you want to be able for it to be able to be viewable for people outside of REDCap and with outside of the specific project that you're working on, and then an optional description. Within your project, you can specify who can view this report or who can edit the report. And they can be based on the specific users, the roles, or the data access groups. So if you have a bunch of people in the same role, you can just select that one role and those will all be selected. For this step, you can select which fields you want to incorporate. So if the data is something that's important to you, but you don't necessarily need to see that the completion data fields within each of the surveys, then you don't have to include that. There is a way that you can just select from the quick add, like a checkbox of all of the different options that you want within your entire project, or you can specify which instrument you want to add all of the fields to. But once you do that, you'll have to individually remove them if you don't want all of the fields from that instrument. Something that's important to note is that you can include the survey timestamp fields, which is something that's built into REDCap, but not necessarily a custom field. So that doesn't automatically show up if you want to see when people have submitted their surveys. The checkbox option will show up as individual columns of like option A was selected, option B was not selected, and option C was selected. If you combine checkboxes into a single column, it'll list them all in a text field, which might be easier to parse through as opposed to just looking for like, okay, so this column, people had checked option A as opposed to option B. And that's all that I have for fields. In terms of filters, that's it'll relate back to how we sorted and had different project or record status dashboards for treatment A and treatment B. So in that welcome data instrument, it specifies like in a hidden field, this participant is in treatment A versus treatment B. And so I can just filter that specifically in here to make sure that it equals A or equals B. And then lastly, the default sorting is going to be by record ID, but you can sort by any other variable that you have or any other field that you have that makes more sense for your particular study. So this is a glimpse of one of the projects that we are working on for the request portal that has all of the reports listed. As you can see, there's a lot. So we actually organize them by report folders, and those are the ones denoted in red with the minuses and the plus signs next to them here. And so that way it's a little bit easier to expand and collapse the group of reports that I am looking at. The way that you can see that is that your reports are going to be visible once you create custom ones on the left-hand side, and they'll be listed here, similar to how they're listed here. And if you click this Organize button, you'll jump to this space that allows you to create folders and then assign reports to specific folders. Oops. Okay. So something that Semi will touch on a little bit later is that something that you can do with reports within REDCap is view statistics and charts. It's helpful sometimes to do it with all of the data. You're also able to do this with some of the specified custom reports that you've created. But here's an example of what you'll get in terms of the statistics. You can change the viewing options so that it's plots and statistics, plots, or just statistics. But these are all default. These are all default that just come with when you click this button here. And there's not really a way to include or exclude within this space or change any of the formatting here. But Semi will talk a little bit more about this in the next section of the presentation. But if you did want to customize some statistics and plots, there is a project dashboard space. So that's located on the left-hand side. And you can click on that and create new project dashboards, which comes with 3 different features. So it comes with smart functions, smart tables, and smart charts. Your smart functions will just be your statistical values, and these are the generic min, max, mean, median. And then I think outside of that, the aggregate unique function allows you to pull the unique value for a specific field. And these you'll see in terms of the formatting are things that you can pipe into any of the fields that you have in different parts of the project, but this is just a way to have a dedicated dashboard that customizes what statistics and plots you're looking at. I recommend using the wizard because it will allow you to select, I want the minimum value for this field or for this report, and then it will give you that custom code that you can copy and paste into the text here. When you're looking at the project dashboard, once you've finalized it, sometimes you'll get an error that says insufficient amount of data for display. And that's because the minimum number of records required to display something in the project dashboard is 11. So that's something to know if you have a smaller data set, that project dashboards might not be the best option for you to visualize your data. The smart tables, however, automatically generate this with all of the statistical values that I had mentioned before. You can specify which variables are going to be here, and this is the syntax for that. Or if you want to specify which columns are viewable, you can specify the fields in the same way that you specify the variables, and then following up with the column values that you'd like to see. And then lastly, we have smart charts. Very easy for categorical. It doesn't necessarily have to be a line graph. It can be a bar chart or a pie chart. And again, Semi will get into that. But the things to note for that is that the colors are preset. You can't necessarily change it. If you need a like accessibility option, there is like color alternatives for like the legends and then denoting the differences between the data. You can again use this charts, the tables, or the functions in any of the places that you can pipe data within the project. But you can also do that within the project dashboard. And you can also when you're seeing this in the project dashboard, there should be a click to enlarge button so you can view it in the full frame, as well as a download visualization space. So the last thing I want to mention is that I talked a little bit about the statistics. These are other optional parameters that can be included in those commands so that you can pull specific data and have it be more focused. So, for example, you can use dashboards and reports combined together by specifying like, oh, I would like all of the, I would like the maximum value within this particular report. And if we jump back to here, we have the specific unique like report ID, which is what then gets generated later. But when you're using the wizard, you should be able to specify the report name, and then it will prompt you, it'll give you the unique report name. And the rest of these are just the wording itself. So you can have it organized by record name, unique event names, and all of these will, you don't necessarily have to specify which one, but that'll be how it pulls the information. So I know it's a lot of information. We have a lot of other things to get to, but I think just as a basis level, these are the things that you can do with data visualization within REDCap. And Semi and Mark will talk about what happens when you take the data outside of REDCap. So I know that was a lot, but are there any questions?
Colleagues that are monitoring hands up or chat. So if you want to put your information or question or whatever in chat or raise your hand, you'll be identified and we'll follow up with that. If you have any questions on Marcelina's presentation, appreciate it.
I'll stop sharing for now, and then I don't see any questions quite yet, and then I'll let Semi take over.
Okay. Thank you, Marcelina. That was a wonderful presentation. I will say that we, the admin team, have used different aspects of what she just presented and what Semi is getting ready to present in some of our own data management for leadership. And so, it's good to know these pieces of information as you want to analyze and visualize your data. And for that, Marcelina, please start. I mean, Simi, sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about statistics and data exports. All right, so we just talked about visualization options within REDCap. You could make data reports and custom dashboards like Marcelina talked about. You also have the option to do stats and charts. And what that can do for categorical variables, you can do frequency counts, bar graphs, and pie graphs. For continuous variables, you can find descriptive statistics and scatter plots. And these graphs can be downloaded or exported in reports. The options look like this. There's no tab at the top for stats and charts, but there will be a button right there next to all data that says stats and charts. When you click that, the tab will open up, and this is what your option will look like. You'll be able to select an instrument and a record, and it'll show the data there. These are some examples of what you can find with the stats and charts options. This is categorical variables. This is the frequency chart. You get an option to do a bar chart or a pie chart. This is what it will look like. This is what it looks like for continuous variables. You get a bunch of descriptive statistics at the top, as well as a scatter plot. And you can obviously download these images, as I said. All right, now I'm going to talk about exporting data specifically to statistical programs. REDCap is actually compatible with a variety of statistical programs, and you can export data for several different reasons. If you're preparing a project for publication, you might need to do advanced analysis, and you will have to rely on a statistical program to do that anyway. You might want to do statistical modeling, like a regression. Or you just might want more visualization options. If you want to change colors, if you want to add an X and Y axis label, if you want a variety of different forms of graphs, that could be a reason to use a statistical program. So here are some of the different options. You can export data as a CSV or Excel file. You can get the raw data to import it into another program, or you can get it labeled if you want to send it to somebody else. You can export data as a SAS, R, SPSS, or STATA file to import it directly into those programs. You can export it as an XML file if you've had to migrate a project from REDCap to ITS REDCap. You're familiar with this because this is typically done through XML files. And you have several privacy options. You can de-identify the data. You can select specific fields or instruments depending on who has access to the data. This is what the options look like when you try to export data in REDCap. You see on the left column all the different forms you can export it as. You have de-identification options in the middle. You can remove identifier fields. When you make a project, it'll ask you which fields are identifiers. So that's how it determines what an identifier field is. You can remove date and date time fields, or you can change the format of those fields when you export it. And you can set certain delimiters for CSV files. Obviously, commas are default, but you can change that as well. Oh, and you can also change the decimal format if you want scientific notation, for example. Okay, now I'm going to talk about exporting with API. So if you want to directly import data automatically into a statistical program instead of having to go manually, you export the file and then you import it. If you just want to directly pipe that into it, you can do that through API. So the first step is to request an API token. This is the link to request the token. The QR code is right there as well. And if you want a quick approval, request only export privileges. If you're just trying to export data for statistical analysis or for data visualization, you really only need export privileges. If you want more privileges, that tends to take longer to approve. You might have to have a data use agreement. We'll probably have to meet with you and discuss that. But if you want quick approval, just ask for export privileges. That's the simplest way to do it. And if you want to test it out before using it, REDCap offers an API playground where you can play around with it and see how it works with different statistical programs. So once you have the API token, it will come with a little key. And then you would open your desired software like SAS or R or Python. And you would use the specific program that goes with that software. So for SAS, you would use a proc HTTP command, and then you would put the API token in the URL. If you're using R or RStudio, you would need to download the REDCap R package or Tidy REDCap package. They're both very similar. REDCap R has more features, but Tidy REDCap is a little bit more user-friendly if you're a beginner. For Python, you would have to use PyCap. And then it's pretty self-explanatory from there. And data can automatically be de-identified. So for example, if you have a statistician who is working with these statistical programs and you want to send them data automatically, but you don't necessarily want them to see identification, maybe for IRB reasons, you can automatically de-identify the data. They will never see any of the identifying characteristics. On that note, here are some privacy reminders. Exporting data depends on user rights and identifier access. So different users on a project, if you're working with a lot of different collaborators, you can give a specific user no access. You can give them de-identified access so they can only export de-identified data, or you can give them full access. And user rights can also vary by instrument. So if you want to give one user full access to one instrument, but then only de-identified access to another instrument, you have the option of doing that. Exporting with an API also requires separate permissions. So there are some users that can export manually, but not with an API, and vice versa. You would need to give users permissions to both if you want them to have both, or take it away from both. We recommend that you use data access groups for multi-site studies. If you're doing a study with TMH or with another university and you want them all to have the same privileges, you can create a data access group, assign certain privileges, and then add people to that group. That's a way to streamline the process and to make sure nobody falls through the cracks. And also always de-identify data when sharing externally. That's just a good reminder to keep in your head. All right, so here's my summary. Simple data visualization can be done within REDCap. We talked about the charts that you can make with the stats and charts feature. For in-depth analysis, you need outside programs. REDCap can be manually exported in several different formats. You can get a CSV or Excel file, R, SAS, SPSS, Stata, XML. And exporting can be done automatically with API. Does anybody have any questions?
Great presentation, Sammy. Thank you for sharing that. As we mentioned before, if you have a question, please raise your hand or put your question in the chat. Our colleagues will be monitoring both of those. And you'll get another opportunity at the end of the next presentation to talk about anything REDCap or anything related to these three presentations.
All right, I don't see anybody raising their hand or putting anything in the chat, so I'll just stop sharing.
Okay, thank you so much again. The next presentation is by me. I am going to talk about extracting data using the APIs and using the reports that both Simi and Marcelina talked about. So I'm trying to bring those two concepts together to do my presentation. And I am going to start out. I had a wonderful opportunity to represent Florida State University at a REDCap conference earlier this year, and I'm going to use some of those slides, but then I drill down a little bit more detail. So allow me to share. Alrighty, and click in here. Um, did you guys see this one over here where my mouse is? Everybody say yes, no?
Yeah, we can see it.
Good.
Okay, cool. So this was this beginning of my slide presentation. Actually, I had a poster session, but I also had a slide presentation that I shared with some of the colleagues there at the conference. And let's do that. So then this is the poster that encompassed everything that some of what Marcelina and Cindy spoke about. There's a lot of information here. Some of this stuff is hard to see, so I'm going to drill down into the parts of this poster. So to talk about this graph right here, obviously we're starting out with REDCap. The end result is going to be in Power BI. I actually wrote some code both in Python and PHP using the API that Simi was talking about to pull the data out in two different ways. The idea is as we start using the Power BI dashboards, perhaps you'll have some need and may or may not have skill sets in PHP or Python or both. And we will be happy to help you put together those scripts. Then once the data is pulled out, it's pushed down, it's actually put out on the file system. And then I import it through into a Snowflake database, which is REDCap is in MySQL. I'm using a Snowflake database. It's a light database to pull the data together before I use Power BI to query the data. Right now I'm using the web interface, Snowflake's web interface to pull the data into tables within Snowflake, but there's also a Snowflake Python connector that can also be used to pull the data in from the CSV files. And then once I pulled the data into Snowflake, I created some views, which is not the real data, but it's just a framework of the data points that I want to pull out of each table. And then once I've created those views, I use Power BI to connect and pull run the queries, the views to pull the data into Power BI to display it. So in general, this is the process we have been talking about, and maybe most of you know about the request portal, previously known as the request ticketing system, but it's a portal system now, 3.0, and we have a form similar to this that you can drill down to the different hubs depending on which area of information you need help in. So to focus in on that screen, the previously part of it anyway. This example, this individual was looking for biostatistics support. He or she clicked on this, then they clicked on drill down to level 2 where they want to look at information about methods and trial design. At this point, emails will be sent out or web pages will be shared through email to that person, the requester. And so then the next part, linking Marcelina's presentation into this, I created these reports or something similar. They have report IDs that will be used in both my Python and my PHP. Again, I don't need to use both of them. I can use one or the other. So then going back to this playground that Simi was referring to, the API playground, after you've established your token, which is something similar to this here, REDCap does a great job in all these different programming tools, a baseline get started, if you will, data code that I pulled in both from using Python and PHP for the next part of when I'm going to present. This is the example. Oops, sorry. This is the example of my Python export from API use in the API token. Again, I'm going to drill down a little bit. So these are those report IDs, if you saw earlier that I mentioned, that obviously the numbers aren't the same, but the concept is the same. This is a reporting ID array, if you guys know anything about programming, and this is a file name array of where it's going to be stored out on the file system, plus the name of the file. So then we're getting into the loop where it's going to loop through those 11 or 12 different record reports that I created in REDCap. It loops through, it has the token, it gets the report ID, and then we're off to the races. It loops through that array, record ID array, and queries the system for that data, and then it is written out to the file system per the array of the file name or the path to the file name. So likewise, again, in the playground within REDCap, I created my query of what data I wanted. The REDCap produced a PHP code that I want to use in my code. So then here's an example of the flow of what I used. Didn't have a lot of space to show it in detail, so I zoom in a little bit. Again, just like I did with the Python, the PHP has an array of record IDs and has an array of file location and file names. And then, of course, you got to have a loop to loop through it. So that in PHP, I'm using a for each loop, loops through, grabs the information, and right down here is where it does the work of querying the data and then writing it out to the file system per the record ID and the file name on the file system. So now that the data is now on the file system, I'm using I'm using Snowflake to pull the data in from the file system. Once you go into Snowflake Framework, the UI, on the home page, there is a query tool and there is a upload files tool. I could have written, and actually when I first started learning Snowflake, I wrote my own queries to pull the data in, but there is a quick way of doing it by just doing the file upload, clicking on that. It asks for the name of the file, you select it, or set of files. And then when part of the UI, it'll ask the table name. I gave it the table name so that so each of those 11 or 12 reports that I originally established in REDCap for the 12 different hubs related to the request portal. Each one of them has its own table, and there's a reason behind that. In a minute, I'll speak about it. But once the data has been loaded, obviously, if those guys are trying to keep me on the ball, these are there's only 9 tables here, and that's because the other 3 or 4 hubs had not had any requests. So Snowflake won't allow you to bring in a empty file. So that's why I have 9 here. Once I have these 9 tables, I created views. I have to use the query data tool to create my views that are actually linked back to the real data. And this is just a view of the data, and it pulls it out. These are the views that I'm going to run in my Power BI connection. So now we're in the Power BI. When you do the get data in the Power BI, one of the options is Snowflake. I clicked on that, and then it asked for credentials and everything, and I established connection to the Snowflake, and then it allows me to pick and choose the tables. This actual schema here is an old one because I originally started building the Power BI dashboard with version 2.0 that we had prior to June of this year. And these are the relational tables to query the data. These were the tickets in that version, and the new version that I will build out will have 12 of these tables individually so that I can report on not only the each table's stats and display it visually, but also I can join all those other tables. And again, I'm sorry I don't have a picture of it because I hadn't built it out yet, but I'll have those 12 tables that I can join for the summaries information that you want on a Power BI dashboard. And so this is the Power BI dashboard that I and the dashboard team worked with me to build out a dashboard that for the 2.0. 3.0 would be something similar. The first view is all the colleges or hubs that needed information or to share the information, and clicking on one of these different buttons down here, the information would change depending related to that college or that hub. And that is the end of my presentation as far as the dashboard. The far future goal is to have people that need dashboards or would like to have dashboards to look at their data or their multiple projects. We could do this for them. I'm hoping that this gets enough traction that we can help with our REDCap colleagues that have clinical data or data in their projects that they would like to look at visually for their presentations, for their team's leadership to look at their data at a glance. And so we would help build a dashboard for them. But for right now, we're just focusing on our request ticketing portals to establish an example of such, and then work with others moving forward on presenting their needs. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I got to reshare. So let me click on that. Okay, and now let me reshare with screen 2, share. And so at this point is where you can ask questions about my presentation or my colleague's presentation, or general questions about REDCap. So I'll defer to my colleagues that are monitoring hands and the chat if you have any questions. Alex or Casey, do you guys see any hands or chats?
Not yet.
Okay. I guess at this point, Alex, you've already posted the links that we talked about.
I will do so.
Great. Thank you, sir. Alex is going to post the links of the common links that we share that may be helpful to you as you're doing your work. You're welcome to scrape that from the chat and keep those for future needs or current needs, however.
We'll also be sending the slides out after the
Yep.
LLC, so you'll be able
Perfect.
to pull the links from there as well.
Good point. Great. Great point. Okay, so these are the reminders of the links that Alex has posted in the chat, or will be posted in the chat, as well as, oops, that's not good. Sorry. Oops, what is going on? And so a few more from the ITS side of migration. And lastly, I want to thank everybody for attending. A lot of information. We still have a few minutes, but we covered a lot of information. But the point of the whole presentation was looking at the data, doing analysis on the data within REDCap, building reports for data extraction, and as also to look at ways that you can use scripting like Python or PHP to look at the data. There are other visualization tools that are out there to look at the data. I just happen to be talking about the Power BI portion of that. Want to mention that Wednesday, January 29th, at the same time, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, will be our next next meeting. We don't have we've had a couple of suggestions on presenters, but if you'd like to present something in your world and your projects and your experiences, we'd love to have you reach out to the REDCap mailbox and send an email and offer up your interest to joining us to present. And then we will post moving forward the topic and who the presenter is prior to the presentation. And since we don't have any more questions, we want to thank everybody for attending. Please share the word of any that the slides that we will be sharing later today could be welcome to share with your colleagues and your projects and your research areas, the hubs, or what have you, and make sure that everybody gets information about it if they weren't able to attend today. And with that, I want to say thank you to everybody and